The car market has been extremely turbulent over the last few years, and despite the fact that car prices have been going down, especially whenever you compare them to this time last year, I think that right now, the spring of 2023 is one of the worst times to buy a used car, with the exception of a few circumstances and vehicles that actually are a pretty good deal right now as we sit here today. And so in this video, I'm going to be breaking down why I believe that right now is the worst time to buy a car, and I'm also going to be breaking down the few exceptions to this rule. Let's get started. So the first reason as to why I believe right now is one of the worst times to buy a used car simply comes down to used car prices. I've talked about this ad nauseum on my channel, so I'll keep this point really brief. The second part of 2022 brought us lower car prices, but the first quarter of 2023 hasn't been so kind. Car prices have gone up short term. In fact, in February, we saw a significant increase in prices of used cars, even when we compare these numbers to seasonal averages. Now, there are a number of different reasons as to why we've seen an increase in used car prices, both in the last few weeks as well as in the last couple of months. But to be honest, I don't think that any of these reasons are cause for major concern. And in general, I think that they're just normal market fluctuations. We can't expect to see price declines week after week and month after month for months on end. Sure, we can hope for it, but whenever we talk about realistic expectations within the used car market, we simply have to expect that some months car prices will go up, some months car prices go down, and maybe multiple months in a row we'll see an increase in prices. But as long as prices are trending downward long term, that's exactly what we want to look out for and what we can expect. And well, unfortunately, this January and February, the car market was met with rising prices. But one thing I do want to mention is that we are entering a season where we typically do see an increase in car demand. You see, tax season is upon us, and every single year like clockwork, around tax season, car prices tend to go up a bit because of the fact that there is an increase in demand. People file their taxes, they get their tax return, and they use that money to buy a new car. This happens every single year, and as a result, there is more demand across both the used and new car market, and as a result, we may see higher prices in the short term as a result. So if you notice that prices are going up in the month of March and in the month of April, this is what I believe is the cause behind it, and again, I don't think it's a reason to be concerned. The next topic that I have to discuss is interest rates, and this is a big con of buying a car in the current market conditions, and it's actually one of the benefits of the 2021 car market. Sure, in 2021, you were paying an inflated price for your vehicle, but at least you were paying very, very low interest rates, though the interest rates weren't low enough to offset the cost of the vehicle itself. Today, in March of 2023, not only are vehicle prices higher than they were a couple of months ago, but interest rates are also higher, and much higher than they were in, say, 2021. So today, not only are you having to pay a premium on the vehicle itself, but you're also having to pay a higher interest rate as well. You're basically getting hammered on both sides of the purchase. Interest rates are very, very high and are in the double digits for most borrowers. For some subprime borrowers, the interest rates are looking closer to that of credit cards more than car loans. Unless you can get some sort of killer interest rate on a new or used car, interest rates alone are a reason to second guess buying a car today. There are only a couple of scenarios where I think buying a car today would make sense despite the high interest rates. The first scenario is if you're somebody that's wanting to buy a car and you're just wanting to finance that vehicle for a very, very short period of time. I'm talking about paying off that vehicle in a year or less. So if you plan on doing this, you want to buy a car, you want to finance it, build up your credit a bit, but then pay off that loan extremely aggressively, then interest rate won't really matter that much. Another scenario where financing could possibly make sense is if you were able to get an extremely attractive interest rate. There is a long-held belief with money management and investing that if you can get an interest rate lower than the amount that you could make if you were to, say, invest that same cash in your business or in the stock market, then in those types of scenarios, it can make sense to finance that vehicle rather than pay for that vehicle in cash. The exact interest rate threshold that we're talking about depends on the exact purchase, the investment, as well as who you're speaking to, but it's typically around 6%, but some say for vehicles, it shouldn't be above 4%. So for example, if you were to buy a vehicle and you were given a 3.5 or 4% interest rate, it would in that scenario most likely make sense to simply finance that vehicle, because if you were to put that exact same money into the market, you would make more than 3.5 to 4% off of that investment. So you would make more than you would pay off of the interest on that vehicle. But alternatively, if you were to get an auto loan for, say, 10%, it would not make sense to finance that car, because if you were to put that exact same money into the market, you would not make a 10% return, and as a result, your money is better spent simply paying off the car in full and not holding loan or debt on that vehicle and thus paying no interest. Now, interest rates won't stay at this level forever, but they most likely will for the foreseeable future. So if you are somebody that needs to buy a car and you need to finance that car, then you're going to have have to pay a premium in order to do it. The next glaring issue of the used and new car market is dealership inventory. Dealership inventory is improving. In fact, the microchip shortage is slowly sorting itself out, and due to a decrease in demand, used cars aren't flying off shelves, which has created fuller lots for the dealerships. But we do still have a long ways to go. Nearly 500,000 cars have been cut from production just this year in 2023. And while new vehicle supply is up 68%, automakers are still struggling to keep up with demand. And this is due to both the pandemic as well as the automotive shift to electric vehicles. Supply still isn't back to where it was in 2019. And while supply may never return to that level, at least for new cars, we can expect to see inventory increase. And once this happens, it will create a trickle down with car prices, but it will also give you, the buyer, a better selection of vehicles as well. Inventory is having an effect on not only how much people pay for a car, but also the selection that they have available to them. And I don't know about you guys, but if I'm spending $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 on a car, I want to make sure that it is the exact car that I want to purchase. And right now, the selection just isn't great. For that reason alone, I think it's worth waiting at least a few months. And last, but certainly not least, is the economy. I've talked about this so much in recent weeks, but I am absolutely convinced that we are on the cusp of a massive economic shift here in the United States. Is that shift going to be a depression or a recession? I don't know, but I do think that we're on the brink of something big. And I think over the last couple of weeks, many of us have been feeling this. Between layoffs, bank failures, there is just something in the air. And while I of course don't want to base my entire hypothesis off of Fugazi and a feeling, the fundamentals just don't lie. People are losing their jobs, loan delinquencies are rising, people are in too much debt. I could go on and on. The car market in its current state is simply unsustainable. And while I do think that there is an argument to be made that some vehicle segments will not return to normal pricing. For example, there is constantly an argument being made that exotic cars or high-end sports cars will not return to pre-pandemic levels. But the reality is, in this video, we're not talking about V12 Lamborghinis or rare Porsches. We're talking about your grandma's minivan, your neighbor's Focus, my Toyota Yaris's. These are the vehicle segments that the majority of us are looking out for, and these are the segments that are going to crash in the coming months and in the next couple of years. The normal everyday cars that the average person is looking to buy are the market segments that are going to experience the biggest shift once we see a more measurable shift in the economy. But the reality is we just aren't there yet, and as a result, prices haven't fallen enough. And the unfortunate truth is that I think many of the points that I've discussed in this video create a scary scenario for potential vehicle buyers, because people that buy a vehicle today are not only overpaying for that car, they're paying a higher interest on that vehicle as well, and they're going to be fighting an accelerated depreciation rate. As a result, they are much more likely to be underwater on that vehicle later on, which can put them in an extremely scary financial situation later on down the road. And while there are a number of different scenarios where somebody may have to buy a car today, they don't have a whole lot of choice in the matter, there is still a way that you can go about doing it in a smart, strategic way. And if you are somebody who falls into this type of scenario, then I encourage you to buy a cash car, finance as little of the vehicle as possible, and if you have to buy a car, make sure that you buy one that's below market value. Because though car prices are still inflated, there are still below market value finds out there. You just have to look for them. But then that of course begs the question of which vehicles do I actually think are good buys today in March of 2023? One of the best buys on the market today are Teslas. Teslas are one of the few cars on the market that have crashed in price. This is due to Tesla price cuts that they announced earlier this year. And if you want a Tesla, used or new, now is a great time to buy. There are really solid Tesla Model 3 standard ranges for under $30,000 out there. There are also great long range runs for around $32,000. And you can even get a new one for around the mid 40s. From a fair market value standpoint, as well as just a price standpoint, I think Teslas are one of the best buys on the market today. Next is new cars. I am not a fan of buying new cars. I think there are a few scenarios where buying new makes sense, but the majority of the time buying used is the better option. But if you are someone who is hell-bent on buying new, and if you can buy cash or at the very least get a solid interest rate, now is as good as a time as ever to buy new. Assuming of course that you can comfortably afford the car. And another great avenue that you can go down in order to find some below market value deals are third-party platforms like Facebook Marketplace. I buy a lot of cars. I've continued buying them throughout the last couple of years. I bought cars throughout 2021, throughout 2022. I've purchased 3 cars this year alone. And I can tell you that if you search through Facebook Marketplace long enough, you will find sellers that are just wanting to simply get rid of their vehicles. In fact, 2 of the last 3 vehicles that I purchased were cars that somebody was selling simply because they had purchased themselves a new car and they wanted to get rid of this car that I bought. In fact, in both scenarios, these individuals purchased Teslas and they were getting rid of their old cars. And in both cases, they simply wanted wanted to get rid of the car. They didn't want to deal with it. They didn't want to have to pay for insurance, have it parked outside of their house. They simply wanted this car gone. This creates a really great negotiating opportunity for you, because the reality is that if a seller has taken the time out of their day to meet with you, they are wanting to sell the vehicle to you. And once you get face to face with them, you can really negotiate on price aggressively, especially if it's somebody that's just wanting to get rid of their old car. In both of these scenarios, I was really able to take advantage of the fact that I was in front of the seller, that I was the first person to go look at the car, and in both cases, I was able to buy these cars for between $2,000 and $3,000 below market value, which was a huge win. Now, I will caution you that finding these types of sellers is the equivalent of finding a needle in a haystack. They are hard to find and they are few and far between. Most sellers on Facebook are small dealerships and they're simply not wanting to negotiate that aggressively. But once you do find these individual sellers that are simply getting rid of their old cars, that is a great purchase for you, because chances are you'll be able to get it below market value, which is always a win. But with that being said, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it. So make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.